Now if you're wondering what I'm going to do with all these cardboard boxes and you haven't seen my cardboard box planting method before, then you're in for a treat. And if you have, you're still in for a treat. But let's get this going. So I know I said there wasn't a lot of weeds, but whenever you get looking, there's always a few pop up, like those stray dandelions there and a bit of couch grass here creeping in. It's important to get as much out as possible, because look at that tangled mess of roots. Don't just chop it with a spade, use a garden fork and then fetch out as many roots as you can get. The roots go so far down, but they do come out like that if you do a bit of perseverance with them. Once the soil's ready, that's it, you're ready to go. What have I done with my rake? There we go. So just give it a gentle level over with the rake. Make sure everything's ready level, and then we'll start our next step. And the next step, get as much good, nutritious compost in it as you can. And this is all homemade compost. It doesn't have to be perfect. Rough stuff's all right. It'll just continue to break down in the soil. Where's that rake gone? See what I mean about the rough, it being rough? There's big chunky bits. There's all kind of different textures in here. Now I haven't dug this bed. I don't really dig unless I'm removing a few weeds like that couch grass you saw. That's the extent of my digging. Just use the back of the rake to help you spread it out. These pots that we had our tomatoes and stiff growing in, they're going to get emptied out onto here. That's fine. So, as many pots as I can find, I'm going to empty that out. There's still a lot of good nutrition to be had in spent compost. You know, just because you've used it for one season, it doesn't mean it's dead. There's still a lot of life in it. So now that my bed's ready, it's time with the cardboard. When you're using cardboard to mulch, make sure you strip off all this sellotape. You're going to reduce as many microplastics into your soil as possible. Coloured card like that, I have no problem with at all. Most of that ink is degradable. It's not the old stuff that they used to have, a lot of lead-based inks. It's not that sort of thing. So I wouldn't worry. The stuff that I would worry with is, you know, the shiny cardboard. Because sometimes that has a layer of plastic over the top of the cardboard. That's the stuff that I would worry about. Let's get one of these pots and we'll use it as a bin. So don't worry about this getting this perfect, because we're not sheet mulching in order to get rid of weeds as you would if you're starting out a garden for the first time. So one thing I do is I plant garlic in random places. That's what you can see with these plants that are already coming up that I must have missed on the harvest, and they're just popping themselves up. But that's fine, they can stay where they are. Okay. So now I'm ready to start planting. And what I do is you just cut a small hole into your plastic, into your cardboard, and then plant straight into there. Bismillah. So remember which side goes down. The flat end goes down, pointy end up. It does take a little bit of time to get your garlic all planted, but the advantage is, over the long run, it saves you a lot of time, because you're not going to have problems with weeds coming up. You're not going to have problems with the birds pulling them out as easily. So just to get them planted it's an absolute doddle, and then they're in the ground. And because of the way we've done it, you're not going to have to feed this garlic again. Once it's in, that's it, forget about it. It's a plant and forget about for the rest of the season. You don't have to worry about. And because we've got this mulch on, it's going to take a while for it to break down, and it's just going to continue feeding your garlic. Because we've got this big level of sheet mulch down, it's going to take a long time to break down. And what's going to happen is it's going to protect your plants from being overrun by weeds. Because let's face it, every gardener hates having to weed the garden, and any little job that's going to save us from having to weed the garden again is going to be a massive help. That's why we wanted those perennials out first of all, any perennial weeds, because they will push up the cardboard from underneath and they'll force it to break down a lot faster. So get out your perennials. Annuals you don't need to worry about, because they're going to die under here anyway. And they'll just go back into their life cycle and feed the soil. The circle of life, yeah. And look at the distance that I'm making my holes and I'm planting my garlic. So it's roughly about 6 inches apart. There we go. Oops, nearly did it the wrong way, nearly did a schoolboy error. But yeah, there we go. So I normally have my little munchkins out helping me with this, but they're saying it's a little bit too cold for them today. It's about 3 degrees, so I don't blame them. But at least it's not raining, eh? One problem people can have with this method is that the cardboard can become dislodged, or it gets blown away by the winds. And that's why I threw all those weeds onto the grass. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mow my lawn, and all those grass clippings are coming straight onto here, and then that's going to be a good way of weighing down all this cardboard. And once it's had a rain, it's not going to go anywhere. If you haven't got grass to clip, chuck a few bricks down on top and it'll be fine. So why do I plant my garlic out in October? Because garlic needs a nice long growing season. It probably needs about 8 months to 10 months to grow to full maturity. Now if you want big chunky cloves like this, then you really want to push it to as long as you can. Otherwise they're just going to not bulb out enough, or they'll won't split enough. And that's why we plant it in October, so we get that cold frost through the winter, because that forces the garlic bulb to split. Or you could end up with a lot of these kind of bulbs where the garlic hasn't actually split, it's just one bulb. Yes, it's easier from a peeling point of view, but look at the size of that. I mean, that was planted late last year. A couple of years ago, just from a couple of beds down there, I harvested nearly 60 kilos of garlic. And I plant garlic like this in one patch as my main crop, and then I randomly plant garlic in amongst all of my other plants. See, I'm not going to just leave my garlic planted as it is. So remember my what to sow in September video, I planted these broad beans. Now these are going into the ground. So in amongst my garlic, these are just going to get popped in. Let's make some space for you. And they're going to sit here. A lot of people have issues with black fly and they have problems with aphids on their broad beans. I don't have problems with black fly on my broad beans because I plant them in amongst my garlic like this. And I know some people say that you shouldn't plant beans and garlic together. I personally haven't found a good enough reason not to. Some people say because broad beans are a nitrogen fixer, and just like other legumes, they're nitrogen fixers, and alliums don't need a lot of nitrogen. They're not a good companion plant. I think that's absolute rubbish. I think it's totally fine. You're going to feed your garlic, you're going to feed your onions all nitrogen plant-based fertilizers anyway, so you're going to chuck chicken manure in here, you might chuck a bit of cow manure down here, on here, horse manure, anything like that. Grass clippings are going to give it loads of nitrogen. It helps, it really does help. And the smell of the garlic is going to distract any aphids that are potentially going to come in and prey on my broad beans. And look at these, they're doing absolutely gorgeous as well. So where I've got this big chunk of garlic that I must have forgotten to harvest a whole bulb, and that split off and it's produced a big cluster. So that'll be interesting next year. Look at the lovely root ball, absolutely beautiful. Get that in the ground. We're going to have nice broad beans nice and early next year from these. Don't worry about if you don't see signs of life within the first few weeks. Remember what garlic does, along with onion sets, if you were to plant them out, is they develop their roots first. So they'll send out a little shoot, but it won't be anything much. They'll send out a massive bunch of roots and then they'll just pop up. And then within about a month, you'll have a plant that looks almost as big as this. Yeah, I mean, if you ever plant as big as that in about a month's time, then you should be very happy with yourself. Garlic is a hardy plant. It's not going to really be affected by the winter. You might see it look a bit miserable and look a little bit weak because the frost got to it, but don't worry about it at all. It's got enough energy in that bulb to push through, and come next spring, it's going to put on some massive growth and show some wicked signs of life. Now that we've covered it in with that cardboard like that, and we've tucked it away, that's going to protect the soil, that's going to save it from being eroded, and it's going to stop nutrients from leaching out. So it's a great way of protecting your soil, it's a great way of mulching your plant. Come next summer, you're going to have a fabulous harvest of garlic, and then you're going to be able to follow it on with something like squash or something like that. Absolutely wonderful. So there's my guide to growing garlic, a little bit of information about it, and a new method for people who are watching this for the first time. So I'm going to leave it there for this one. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.